like this film is my dream and I've been working on it for 4 years. Yes, that can come with a lot of pressure and anxiety, but my ultimate dream would to be on set having the absolute time of my life making this.
Welcome to Rescreen der Film Podcast. We haven't translated the title of our podcast yet because it's our first recording in English that we have, because it's a special episode that we're doing today. And we have a guest today to the show because we will be talking about one of my favorite films of 2025. I think I mentioned it a couple of times in the podcast already. We'll be talking about Christy, an Irish film that I got to see at Berlinale last year, where it was presented at Generation 14 in the program, and it also won the jury prize in that program, as well as the prize for the best Irish film at Galway Film Fleet. And it is done by Brendan Canty. You might have known or heard of him because he was one of the people who did the music video for Hosea's Take Me to Church, as well as two short films called For You, which feature Barry Keoghan, and Christy, the short film which also features Christy that we'll be talking about today. And I'm very happy that Brendan is talking to us today. So very welcome to you again. Thank you for being at a podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I'll give a little introduction into what Christy is about, and then maybe you can add to that because some of the people who we're talking with today maybe haven't seen the film yet. It is a film about a 17-year-old boy named Christy. He just got kicked out of foster care and he moves back in with his half-brother Shane in like the working class area of Cork, and there he tries to navigate his life back in the home with his brother, who lives together with his wife and his newborn child, and he kind of reconnects with past friends and family members, try to navigate into a future, maybe trying to grow up in that environment. And yeah, I think it's a lovely film. I'm very happy that we can talk about, but maybe you can start with telling us how this project started and how like Christy came maybe from the short film to the feature film.
Yeah. So I wrote this film with Alan O'Gorman, who was one of my first ever best friends. My first ever best friend, actually. We grew up in the same housing estate when we were like 5, and we would have played football together through our childhood and teenage years. And when we were teenagers, there a few boys from the area that Christy is in joined the team, and they were very like Christy, like lovely, lovely fellas, but had come from like tough backgrounds and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And they were just amazing characters, and the coaches on our team always like ended up kind of being, we never realized it back then, but like such male role models for them and almost their social workers unofficially. Um, and we just always, when we started to make films, we always wanted to maybe make something about boys like them.
Mhm.
We always were drawn to making a story about that, and we always wanted to make a Cork story. So that's kind of where it started, but we didn't really have our theme. And then I remember it was Bonfire Night, which features in the film, which is kind of around the summer solstice. It's in some parts of Ireland, people will like these bonfires just around their housing estates on the greens and fields and stuff like that. But I went up. It particularly happens up in the north side in this place called Knocknaheeny where Christie is set. So I went up there to take photographs, and I remember very vividly chatting to these two teenagers who were drinking cans around a bonfire. They had their hoods up. They looked like the sort of lads that you'd probably, if they were coming towards you, you might walk to the other side of the street. Like they looked dodgy, like, kind of football hooligan types. But I ended up getting chatting to them, and they they were very interested in what I was doing and asking me about, what am I doing with the camera? And I said, I'm just taking photographs. They were kind of like, why are you taking photographs of this shit hole? And I was like, oh, it just looks so cinematic with the fires and on the top of the city, and it's just so visual. And they got that then, and they thought that was cool. And then anyway, I was talking to them for ages about being a filmmaker, and he was quite interested in that. And then I was so very naive about like class insecurities and all of that. And I just remember being so excited and I was like, you should get into filmmaking, you know, college is free in Ireland. You just go, or it's like paid for by the government, whatever. And he was just like looking at me like I had two heads, like, you know, he was like, nah, college isn't for me. And I was like, no, 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 you can go seriously. And
Mhm.
I just didn't get it. And I remember at the end of that conversation, he like thanked me for talking to him. I was like, what do you mean? He was like, oh, no one talks to us. Like, and like, I was just so moved by this interaction that we, and at the same time, I was living in Dublin in an inner city area, quite close to the Guinness storehouse in Dublin, actually. Um, and I remember they do bonfires around Halloween in Dublin, and I just remember I was living in an apartment on like the fourth floor, so I was able to look over this big wasteland, and I was able to see like, you know, a apartment block across the way or flats or whatever we call them. And I was able to just watch all these scrappy young kids from anything from like 7 years old to like 14 up at the crack of dawn with workman's gloves on, dragging pallets across the wasteland, stealing pallets from other housing estates, bonfires, stealing pallets from like DIY yards. So funny, witty, charming, these kids, these working class kids. And then I was like, but at what stage do those kids become the teenagers who I was talking to at the bonfire who had no confidence in himself at all? And I found that really interesting. Like at some stage, these incredibly smart and funny and charming teen kids, where they're from, or this class culture seeps in, and they lose all confidence and belief in their actual ability. So we kind of wanted to write a story about that, contrasting those two things and showing that because in the short film it's all set on bonfire night, and Christy's trying to go for a job interview. He's 16 in the short film, and the kids are trying to build a bonfire, and he's giving them advice. And yet, so you see, he's good at DIY, and he's going for a job in a DIY shop. But when he's in the DIY shop, he's got no confidence in himself. Anyway, it's all about how friends and community can like, rather than putting each other down, because there's a big culture. I don't know about Germany, but in Ireland and the UK, there's a big culture in like your friends maybe like, you know, why are you going for that job interview? Come party with us instead. Like you're
Yeah.
never going to get it, or like, and especially in areas like this, because I think it's more of like if you are succeeding, it probably makes me look bad for
Mm.
not succeeding, sort of a thing. Like, you know, keeping everyone in their place. And like people don't mean it in a bad way, but it does still affect people. Like, you know, people are afraid, especially from this area, to post about their achievements or something because they'll be seen as like big-headed or cocky or whatever. So the short was about that and was really about if your friends kind of actually instead of doing that can get rally behind
Mhm.
you and be like, well, look, you didn't get that job, but you'll get the next one, Christy. You're unreal. It can actually make a big difference. So that was the short film, and when we made it, we found when we were casting it, we came across this place called the Cabin Studios, which is this like porta cabin in this area, which has been turned into a music studio. It's kind of like a youth club, which teaches kids how to make hip hop. And like, we just found this whole bunch of kids there who are rappers, but who are the most hilarious and funny and charming kids. And we were trying to street cast kids, so it immediately became clear to me that I was like, if these kids can rap and they're absolute characters, then they'll probably be brilliant actors, especially if they're playing a version of themselves.
Yeah.
So that kind of, and then we were also trying to write a feature, which we were struggling with. And when we found these kids, they and got to know them and their stories, it kind of inspired a much bigger film.
Mhm.
So, in hindsight, I think the Cabin Crew was gaining a lot of momentum or like popularity with I think a song a year ago or 1.5 years ago or
Yeah,
maybe.
so this was back in 2019. So like
Oh,
Christie, the feature was kind of well underway before like the Spark, that song you're talking about,
Mhm.
happened.
mhm.
That was just such a bonus. Like that happened the summer that we actually shot Christie. I think it came out in like June or something, and we shot Christie in August, and then they went viral and went crazy. It was just very quickly then it became a big part of how we sold the film and stuff like that. I mean, I don't think it would have changed. We would have came to Berlin and got them to perform and done all that.
Yeah.
But it just their profile really kind of helped sell the film, I think.
Yeah.
It's cool. It was just this whole project has always had this really nice positive flow to it, you know, like good things keep always happen in this project or something, or have so far. It's been really kind of extraordinary, and that was one of those just extra amazing things, you know, and it gave the kids even more confidence than they already have, like, you know, but what's cool about the kids is they're so grounded from being from that place that they're so polite and charming and like they never will like you know because they're in a movie or because they've had this song that's gotten a billion hits they'll never be that'll never change them into like little divas or anything like that. They're so grounded and respectful and oh, it's such an amazing place.
They would definitely deserve to be a little divas once in a while, though.
And
I
I'm
think
sure
we're
they
all
do.
huge
Don't get me
fans.
wrong. Like,
Maybe as we're talking about the casting already, not saying to take away from the kids, but there's a bunch of other actors that we might have seen before in the film. There's Alison Oliver, who I think most of us know from Saltburn, a film also with Barry Keoghan. And then I happened to watch Young Offenders in between my first screening of Christy and the second one. And then in the second one, I was like, oh, this is Chris Wally, aka Jock from Young Offenders. And I was wondering how all of these actors kind of come in. Is it like a core connection and everyone knows each other, or how is the casting going on for this part?
yeah, the short film really helped with that. So Danny, who plays Christy, when we made the short film, Young Offenders season two was they were looking to cast somebody and they couldn't find anybody, and then word got out that Danny was really good in Christy, so Danny got this big part in Young Offenders and got to know Chris, and then I got to know Chris because of that, and then when the short film came out, like Alison Oliver was living in Cork, with her boyfriend at the time, who was Éanna Hardwicke, who's another Irish actor who's doing amazing things, and the two of them were big fans of it, and so we had connected back then with the two of them, and so I knew Alison was a fan, and when it came to making the film, I think, by the way, I think those actors I think everyone had heard about our kind of ethos of how we're making the film, and that it was kind of all of these first time actors are kind of the leads. And I think, and we do a lot of workshops, and we kind of created the film with the help of this community. So, and it was such a Cork film, and everyone loved the short, and so I think everyone wanted to be in it.
Perfect.
So like the role for Alison is like, and for Chris as well, are smaller parts in the movie, and they're like bigger names, you know, and their agents probably wouldn't have been too happy with them doing it initially. Luckily, I was able to go around their agents and just talk to them directly. But oh, they just wanted to be a part of it, and they were so generous with their time and giving their experience to the younger actors and stuff like that. Like just such amazing, gorgeous, gorgeous people, like, you know.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful combination because I don't think they take away from anyone else in the film. As you said, there's kind of like minor roles there, but they also add up to a way of maybe how you can market a film, so it always kind of helps. But you have those films where like
Yes.
you make a film about community, but then you need like an A-list star to have
Yeah,
in the
sure.
film, and that always feels a little off because you kind of know that behind the scenes someone getting paid more and stuff like this. So you have all of those like ethical things to think about. And I don't think any of your film represents that part that with some film kind of like doesn't resonate with me, but it feels more of like one community, and this means actors that we might have seen before as well as kids, and I think
It's so
goes
true,
well
and
together.
I think even in the last year releasing Christie, I think Alison Oliver, for people who are like familiar with her, who are into films and stuff like that, will know her. But even
Yeah.
in Ireland, she's not like a big name yet. But like even recently, like in last week, I saw they were starting to roll out the promo for Wuthering Heights, and like she is like third on the billing, like, you know, like so like I think she's going to be huge, and like I think that will help Christie.
Yeah.
I mean, you learn very quickly that all of that stuff is very important if you want your film
Yeah.
to be seen. I'm not arguing with it.
One thing that I thought was so interesting when you were talking about this community now was how important like also the actors were for the rest of the cast. I was wondering, was there a part where once everyone was together, like in the when you shot the feature, that like having this community change the outcome of the film? Was there a part where you like where it helped to have that many people together and see the film from other angles, or was that already because you already had a short with the same like outline? Was that something until you shot it that it was already like a finished script, or how did that come?
Yeah, it was like we did a workshop with all of the actors kind of pretty late on in our script phase, and they helped. But they helped not so much with the script, but more so with like building out their own characters and their backstories and stuff like that. So it was so good for them to like really own their own characters and stuff, and the community. Like I keep saying that I like to talk about the film as being like I think the main theme is how like is community and how community has the power to like heal somebody. And like the film, like I talk about the Cabin Studios all the time when I'm talking about this film because there's an energy in that place that I've never experienced anywhere else. It's just really incredible, and it is the power of how community can heal so many people. That I wanted that I for Christie, I really wanted to bottle that energy for the film, and how I did that was I think we made it really the heart of the film. Like our production base is in a school, was in a school right next to the cabin. When crew came down, a lot of the crew was just going to be another film job they're working on. I made sure that like to bring them into the cabin, which is literally only a porta cabin. It's two porta cabins now, but it was one at the time. They'd put on gigs for the crew and stuff like that, and like so everybody immediately knew that like, oh, this job is actually a bit extra special than other jobs. So everyone kind of, I think, was in that energy, gave it more because they knew what it was about. And then because like if you're like wanting to get performances out of an actor, or especially well any actor, I was going to say especially a first time actor, it's like I mean one of the key things I think one of the best skills a director can have is making like an actor comfortable and taking away the pressure. Um, and so like but it was and often that will happen if like an actor can be there with their friends and people in a scene, they're immediately more comfortable. But we had like a whole community, so like all of these actors knew each other, like from like especially all the cabin actors, but then the other actors who came in knew each other through workshops. So like we had these first time actors, but they were there with their people. I was their people because I'd made the short film and I made music videos with them, and during COVID, we ran like workshops online, acting workshops with them online and stuff like that. And I bring my daughters up to the cabin now all the time. So it's like it was just a real family buzz and like this power of community and everyone being in it for each other like created this tone and spirit that I think you can feel when you're watching the film. Like, it's like and obviously there's other things, factors like the music and all of this plays into it and stuff like that, which but all of the people who were involved in making those things had been to the cabin, had been to this area, had experienced this feeling that we're talking about. So everyone was um working towards that feeling, or at least was knew what it felt like because they were in it all the time. And like yeah, it wasn't like the vibe on set wasn't like something other than what the movie feels like. Like that music video at the end is kind of
Yeah.
what the
Mm-hmm.
energy is like. Not always, obviously, it's not like a fucking party or anything like that. But it's like it's a community, like, it's yeah, it's so nice. But it
Yeah.
affected everything, and it's like it's made it so lovely in the last year releasing the film because it's like it's not my film, it's everybody's film. And like because there's so many rappers in the film, we like actually that was a very good key point. I really wanted people to own the film, like, I wanted to have people to have ownership of the film. So like a lot of the musicians So every musician who acts in the film is part of a song that's in the film. So like all the songs on the radios that are playing or in the house parties are like songs that we either commissioned for the film or were from that artist that we just licensed or whatever. And like I think all of that makes such a difference to again people really feeling like I didn't just act in this film for 2 days. I was like I'm part of the music, and it's
Hmm.
like it really like it's cool. And then you have all of these people sharing it and giving it the love because it's theirs. It's like
Yeah.
it's really special.
It's yeah.
I'm sorry, this is such a long-winded rambling answer to your question.
Oh no.
But one cool thing that I kind of noticed afterwards was because before the film released, I bumped into Aaron Katatambe, who plays one of Troy's friends. He's the black actor who plays one of Troy's friends. And I bumped into him in Dublin, and he was like, how's the film looking?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's looking great." And he was like, "Did I make the cut?" And I was like, "Yeah, you fucking did." I was like, and then it made me think that like everybody pretty much made the cut. I was just like, bar maybe one or two, it was just like everyone had their moment, and it's like that was cool. Like, it would have been hard to cut, and we would have if we had to, like obviously, but everyone has their moment, so everyone can own it, and yeah, it's been really nice.
It feels so nice to because film is such a communal art,
Yeah.
and it's so weird sometimes that you hear mostly directors or some people from making a film having it their own, and
Yeah.
it's so nice even like with the film even more that it's like the community aspect that you were just talking about. It really for me transcended so much into the viewing experience, which we also talk about it often in the podcast, how important it is nowadays to have this community because some like whatever world events or other things, personal stuff, make it so hard to like grasp
Yeah.
the reality, and having this community is so important. And then film, which is for us also a part of coping with life struggles or whatever,
Yeah.
is part of this. And your film transcended really this feeling for like being part of it. And you, I think, as Lena already said, it's the film also gives you a feeling of being a part of this community, which is so special. And it's very beautiful hearing you talk about how important it was for you to have these people relate to it or make it for them feel like it's part of their own, because this is what we also feel is so important.
I
Yeah.
also like I in the last year I've like thank you for that, by the way. That's really sweet. I in the last year have been doing a lot of reflecting on things that I did, and like because all of this stuff it wasn't really conscious. It was like I don't know, it's just I wanted to be a football coach before, and like when I was a teenager, and I I think what my mother would have said that one of my big strengths would have been getting people together to do something and getting them excited about it. And back then it would have been organizing like five-a-side football matches or tournaments and stuff like that. And like I was always good at getting people excited to do stuff and bringing people together and making sure they have a good time. And when I got into film making, I made a short film when I was 16 and with a guy I met in school, and he was into film, and I just said I'd do it because I was always up for anything. And like filmmaking was the ultimate version of that. It was like people coming together, but to create something, and you have this thing that you can always look back on, and like it was just the ultimate of that, of what I love to do. And it was just like I still like even on Christie, it's like I'm not just a director. I love being a part of everything, not because I'm a control freak, and maybe I'm a little bit, but more so because I just love being a part of what everyone's doing and working as a big team, and it's my buzz, and it's like, but like realizing that this is like my process, or even just going back to that first short film. I'm doing some like lectures in the university now, and like I go back to that short film now a lot, thinking of like, you know, the the fun we had on that film, which made me want to get into filmmaking, is like one of the most important like things I still hold on to on my film sets and try and create that energy of like I never laughed so hard when I made that short film, and it's just like and it's I like when people are getting paid, obviously it's people's jobs and stuff like that, but I still want to create that feeling. But if you're like a DIY filmmaker, and this is something I was pushing hard in like in these lectures I was giving, like because when you're a filmmaker who doesn't have a reputation, who isn't going to be able to get funding because you haven't made stuff yet, so you're basically relying on friends to come and help you make your film. I was like, all you can offer them is a good time, like, it's like
Yeah.
so important. Like people were helping me out with my videos and films because when they did it, it was a great day, it was so that I've realized in the last year that this community thing is such a big part of my process. And like I think filmmaking can get and like the language around filmmaking can get very complicated and but and it can be, it can be, but it can also be quite simple, like, and it's like again going back to actors, like when you're working with actors, when you're working with crew, when you're working with anybody, people will do a better job if they're happy and they're enjoying it,
Yeah.
that is just the same rule applies across the world, like, so like
Yeah.
if you like I learned that that is maybe why I was getting good performances because just the pressure was I'm good at taking the pressure away from people, like, and like making actors enjoy themselves on set. And like I used to think I was just like a bumbling moron director who was like couldn't get my words out when I'm trying to explain what I want in a scene. But I actually realized there was something quite, I don't know, endearing or something that really takes the pressure off the actor when,
Yeah.
the director isn't some like intellect who's like, yeah, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
I think a lot of people, especially when like filmmaking or maybe arts, where there's a project in the end, they sometimes forget that the process might be the part that you have to be interested about, not just the product that comes in the
yeah,
end. But I feel like everyone's like, or sometimes you kind of forget and you push through, so you have the product that you kind of envision at the beginning, but you kind of forget that the time we spend on this earth is a time also while work, and it has to be fun, or it has to be a good time, and not always, but like it has to be a time well spent and not just the product in the end.
exactly. And if you want to go a step further, it's also life, like, it's just like this is how I spend my life. It's just like you hear about directors being dickheads or like, being rude to crew and or being horrible sets, and the film might turn out great, but you're like, because they're super talented or something, but what is the point? It's like, why would you want to be on set for 3 or 4 weeks and have a miserable time? Like, like I understand things go wrong and stress happens and whatever, but
Of course,
as
yeah.
as much as you can, like I want to go like this film is my dream and I've been working on it for 4 years. Yes, that can come with a lot of pressure and anxiety, but my ultimate dream would to be on set having the absolute time of my life making this, it's
Yeah.
like because that's how I want to spend my life, like,
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you can 100% tell. And maybe what I was wondering about, because I didn't watch it at the premiere, but at a later screening at the Berlinale. So it was me, and then I think like 200 kids or school kids who watched the
Oh,
film,
cool.
and everyone had a lot of fun. And I think when you said earlier that everyone kind of like had a part in the film, I think you can tell that there was not like, I think for the kids, I was wondering about why they had so much fun, but I think for the kids, it wasn't like a film made by a grown up who tells stories about kids, but kids telling their own story. And
Yeah,
I think that kind of works well. I feel like everyone had a lot of fun. There
yeah.
was a lot of laugh, a lot of talking about afterwards. But I was wondering if you have in mind that you might make a film for like a younger generation and then have like a different starting point, or does it just like start naturally because it's a bunch of younger kids who do go through that process that you're telling about anyways?
Yeah, I don't know. Like like I don't have any big drive to do just stories about young people or anything like that. It's like stories just have to come to you and like I'm working on some stuff at the moment now, and they're not about young people, but I'm sure stories will come back around that is, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I love like they had so much fun because I gave them that's the same with anybody. I just showed them so much respect, like, and like let them own their characters and we built their characters around them and we were able to explore in workshops their limitations and like where we could how far we could push them and stuff like that. Um Speaking of young people, I feel like there's young people trying to
We
bang
can hear
down
them.
my door here. There's a siege happening. Um but yeah, and like that just doesn't go with kids, that goes with any actors really. It's just like
Yeah. And I think this is probably also why it works both for the younger generation and grown-ups. It's not a children's film, whatever that even means. But like I think it works for anyone because either we've gone through that part or we still have the parts that we see with like younger kids in a film that doesn't count because we're grown up that we don't think about those kind of things anymore.
exactly. And I think
So
you made a great point. Like it wasn't a film that there was some adult trying to just make a kids movie and these kids are in it. It was like no, it was like a movie we made with them, and it was really important that like the kids could watch it and feel like they were being represented.
yeah.
And like I like people may disagree with me on this point, but I think because I'm a white male filmmaker from the West, yes, that's a very privileged position to be in, and it is. But I don't think that should like I feel like I can tell any story I want to tell if I show the proper respect to who I'm telling it. If I listen to them, if I collaborate with them, if I make sure that like it's their voice that's being heard and I'm not projecting anything, you know what I mean? Like I think once you do that, I think anyone can tell anyone's story, but you have to do that if I'm coming into like telling a story about an African tribe or like a queer community somewhere and I'm projecting my like ideas or something like that, then fuck off. Like
Yeah.
that's bullshit, like, but if I'm coming in and like truly listening and collaborating, then I think you can do it. It's just filmmaking, then you should be
Yeah.
fair game.
At the same time, with this topic, it's always also like there's then always a discussion about it sometimes when there is a person that didn't represent like that maybe did a film about other people that he wasn't a part of their community, and then the community reacts or people from the community react that was portrayed and was like, hey, I didn't feel
Yeah.
represented by it. And then the people that made this art, whatever, they cannot handle being like confronted by the community that they wanted to represent. I think there's like a lot of, I don't want to make like exact examples, but this was always the problem that I saw then. It was like the community that wanted to talk to you about what you made, and then you don't want to have the conversation. And it's also, if it's film, it's art. You cannot represent everyone, even if you are part of a community and you tell your own story. There's also maybe some people that didn't feel represented by that portrayal, but it's always important to have then be open about also getting feedback from them and listening. And I think that was very important from the point that you made, that it's when you don't listen beforehand before you make a film, you're probably subjected to more feedback
You
or
don't
critique of
listen
it.
or you
And
don't engage or like maybe this filmmaker or this example you're giving, they saw a cool story and didn't engage properly. They just were like, let's take from that community or something.
yeah.
Or maybe they didn't, I don't know. I'm sure you can get into trouble either way. Like at the moment we're writing a pilot and a series outline for a series based on the character of Robot in Christie. And it's all about life with disability and stuff like that. So we're doing a writer's room in March, and we're getting like Jamie, who plays Robot's going to be a part of it. We're like the day before the workshops, we're meeting with, because it's about his family as well. We're going to meet with Jamie's actual mum and his carer. We have a wheelchair user. Um, a screenwriter who's coming in to the writers' room to write with us. Like, it's like that is engaging with the community. And like there might be someone who, if it comes out, is like, who the fuck is this, able-bodied director to tell this story or whatever. And like, I mean, their opinion is their opinion, but like, I would very comfortably be able to talk to that person and be like, well, I had the opportunity to do this, and I worked with this community really closely to make sure it was people like yourself are as represented as much as possible. So like, I'd be able to stand by that, like, and that's so important. Like, I would never ever dream of making anything without doing that. And I feel like if a community is going to be angered, I mean, I'm sure there's going to be examples, but for the most part, they haven't. There's been something that's gone wrong, and that someone's not shown the right respect to a community or engaged with them or whatever. Um,
Will Jamie be part of this project as well? Because for me, Jamie was like so like seeing him on screen. It was such a great performance, and I was really amazed by how much like every scene he was in, he like
oh, he's
yeah
amazing. He's
yeah,
the show is
and I think he
called the
has
show
such
is
a
called
screen presence.
Robot, and he's the lead. So yeah, did
Okay,
you see him
great.
those?
Yes.
Perfect.
Um, yeah, I know it's amazing. Oh, it's funny, and we had a pitch deck for it when we were trying to pitch it, and like I had a whole page of the pitch deck just like screen grabs of letterbox comments all about like robot, 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 and like I could have filled another page as well. It was so good.
Um, I might want to add another, maybe like general question about filmmaking in Ireland. I don't know if it's like my algorithm, but I feel like there's a bunch of films coming out lately who are like inherently Irish, and I don't just mean Kneecap, but I think Kneecap has been a big part
Yeah,
of this, and also Galba, or the Gaelic language, coming back to arts and filmmaking. And you also feature a lot of like slang, and I needed subtitles for most of the
yeah,
film. And I think it's brilliant to see that, but I feel like there's a big of like an uprise of like going back to roots regarding languages and storytelling. Do you have the same feeling, and maybe like an idea of why it's starting now? Because I do feel like language is political and it kind of comes back right now, especially in Ireland.
Um, why would it be starting? I'm not sure. Like, there's definitely been some trailblazers when we're talking about the Irish language specifically. Like a few years ago, you had on Colleen Kuhn or The Quiet Girl, which like got us nominated for an Oscar or whatever. Like that was that for an Irish language film to break through like that. That was kind of a first. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that was kind of incredible. It got the Irish language onto this bigger scene, and then Kneecap obviously had a big impact. But I think there's an amazing Irish writer and kind of just how would I describe him? An intellect, kind of almost like a philosopher.
Mm-hmm.
He died very recently, a few months ago, called Manchán Mangan, who oh they just he had some beautiful books. I have one here somewhere. Um anyway, it doesn't matter. But he was like, see, learning Irish in school was like so
Mm-hmm.
like boring. They just taught it so wrong. They taught you about the grammar and stuff like that. But like you learn basically to hate Irish, in from the way it's taught in school. And then you come across people like Manchán, and you're like, he tells you how poetic the language is and how playful it is and how like funny it is, and like there's been lots of things like this that has kind of come to a resurgence out of his book.
Mm-hmm.
Um, oh, he has this like amazing book.
Mm-hmm.
Um, 32 words for a field. It's like gorgeous. Like, but you just kind of I think a lot of young people especially have learned that like, oh wow, the language is actually amazing and like
Yeah.
so artistic and creative, and like I can't speak it. I wish I could. So there's a lot of people with like these sort of regrets and stuff like that. Um, but it's so exciting. Sorry, it's like a fucking war going on. It's like, um, it, But it's really exciting to see, and there's loads of people signing up to learn how to speak it. I'm sending my kid to like a Gael school, which is an Irish speaking school now when she goes to school next year. I think lots of people are doing that now. And so it's become trendy basically, rather than before
Yeah.
it was just like just a thing that everyone kind of hated from school. Like, you know. Um, so that's cool. And then slang and stuff, like I can't pinpoint where exactly that shifted, but for me, like seeing young offenders, which like again, I do like young offenders, but it's a bit too slapstick for me. And I also I know it's very charming. I also don't like the idea of like young offenders from this area. It plays into a stigma, even though the lads are charming. Anyway, but the idea that Cork slang and stuff like that can translate to like a British audience in such a big way definitely was like, oh, that's like people get our like sense of humor. And then like watching The Wire and things like that, and like seeing those boys, those corner boys speaking that like Baltimore slang and stuff like that. And I mightn't know what they're saying, but I love it, like,
Yeah.
And it's like, and especially when we were writing Christie, there was always conversations about do you dial back the language because people won't understand. And I think in the end, everyone was just encouraging us to lean into it more. And like, I think people love something that's exotic in cinema, or like if people when they sit down in the cinema and watch a movie from a place they never even thought of before, and then they can relate to it, even if like it's kind of one of the coolest things about cinema. You can be in Brazil for like an hour, in the favelas in Brazil for an hour and a half, like, and like you're
Yeah.
like, I can relate to these characters, like that's amazing. And that's what with Robot as well. It's just like also like the British, especially. I don't know why. Like in London, there's a big Irish thing going on now, which is really, really weird and unusual. And we're just like we're all for it. We're like we'll jump on board the bandwagon if you can fund
Yeah.
some of our films and stuff. But you have like Irish, like there's always been Irish pubs everywhere in the world, but like it's really become a big thing in London. Like
Yeah.
there's stouts like very specific to Cork being like the most popular drinks in London now. Like Fontaine's DC, these bands,
Oh yeah.
Kneecap around the world. They're just, but especially in London. And we've noticed that when it comes to film as well. People are like, you do what you're doing over there. Like we're like all for it. Like, it's like even if they think like, oh, look at the Irish doing, and they don't think that way. They're very, they just, it is very exotic to them and stuff. Like, a lot of them are like, look at this part of Britain that we've never thought of before. And like
Oh,
they do, I swear.
yeah.
But you're like, I'll I'll let you away with that one if you're gonna fund mine.
Just once though.
Um, so like I don't know, there is something going on, not just in Ireland, but globally that
Yeah.
people just like are craving this Irish slang. And do I think there's a lot of words in the Irish language which come from a lot of our slang you learn comes from like not just the Irish language, but from like Irish traveler language that wasn't ever written down, that has like somehow over thousands of years managed to like stay in the language and turn into English. And a lot of words were used just almost like, so when the British controlled us, we could use these words that some of the British soldiers wouldn't know, like, and it was kind of like our own thing. Like we could like kind of take the piss out of them behind their backs and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I think language is just fascinating. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not qualified to talk about it beyond that, but um, it's cool. Like the words you grew up with that never thought about, you're like, that is like 1,000-year-old history. You're like, wow.
It also kind of feels like what you just said. It's more of now going into part of a resistance, like not like being tamed, being like
Yeah.
this was being taken away, and now we want it back. And this is for like here in Germany, like talking about Kneecap or Fountains DC. It was also something that knowing that you're closer together with the people that like are around you, and you are not like try to be taken away and made into something else, and we're everywhere fighting for like the same thing, but we want to be one like part. We want to be like, and I
100%.
think this is for us, like for me personally, this was also a big part of how the like how I being Irish now is like being seen as like with some people being very vocal about it, and the fight for like having this autonomy itself
Well, it's
is part of it, I think.
anti-colonial as well, and it's like,
Yes.
especially in the last few
Yeah.
years, with where the world has been so exposed, like, and stuff that's been going on for years, like, especially over like Palestine and stuff like that. You're like, wow, you're like the shit that's like come out because of like what we're seeing on our phones. You're like, you kind of realize that's been going on fucking for hundreds, for thousands of years.
Hmm.
But especially
Yeah.
in the last 20 or 30 years, you're like, America's been doing that fucking shit for years. And they've just been able to control the narrative better because there hasn't been videos on their phones and they've been able to be the good guy. And I think so many, like, you see all these governments. I saw the Canadian Prime Minister give that speech at Davos yesterday and like talking about the smaller governments, they have sovereignty, but they're not able to stand up to the bigger powers. They have to just pretend that they are working with them on a deal, but really they have to push over. And it's like, I think young people are like, they can't do fucking anything about it other than
Hmm.
be involved in art and protest. And especially in Germany where there's like fucking horrific crackdowns on around the Palestine, stuff like that. And it's like, I think being able to just see these Irish lads just fucking rapping in this language, and they come from a place not as nowhere near as bad as Gaza, but with very similar issues, um, just standing up and like taking on the British government and have American politicians like name drop them. It's like mad.
Hmm.
It's like the British
Yeah.
government trying to take them down. It's like, which is the dumbest thing the British government could ever have done because it just
Yeah.
ups their
It
popularity
skyrocketed.
by
Yeah.
miles. Like,
Yeah.
you're like, do you ever learn? Like, like British government, like, hanging Irish rebellion or rebels in 1916 is like basically led to Irish people taking their
Yeah.
country back. You're making martyrs of people. Like, it's so dumb.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's like there's always been the fighting Irish and this, that colonial thing. It's like it's what it represents, though. I think, and I think
Hmm.
Mhm.
they represent a youth culture on the left who just like are so angry and fucked off with the world.
I think that's so important. Like your film, I think is also a very big part of like this, just showing another side of this, having this community and having another coping mechanism to
Mm.
have this, and yeah, I think this plays a big part in this anti-colonialist way, because that's what they're trying to take away from us, the community, and
Yeah,
we
turn
always
everyone against
strive
each
to.
other. Yeah,
Yeah, and that's very
right.
that's very important to have nowadays. And that's also what sometimes makes it harder for these stories to be seen, because it's like then also not always a story that everyone wants to share, because it makes the people on the bottom like more powerful because they know they can be together.
Yeah,
But even more important to have people telling this story and then embracing the whole process, as we talked about in this in the last hour, being like the ingraining this community feeling. Yeah, that's
100%. And I think film, like I was asked recently, I was applying for something, I don't know what, and I was asked one of those generic questions of like, why is film important, sort of a thing. Like, whoa, okay. Um, but like when you think about it, you're like film is still kind of a bit of a stronghold where somehow, for example, in the last few years when just like, it was so divisive, even just supporting Gaza, you're like in Palestinians, like
Mhm.
you're anti-Semitic, all the mental stuff. You're like, it was like for somehow films were still able to be made with big budgets, like like and like that, like film is still a place where that is kind of it's a space where these things can still get made, and I think there's an important role a film can play in like if you're in just say in America, if you're very on the right and someone's very on the left, Republican, Democrat, like they hate each other and they're never going to see eye to eye. It's like the two of them ending up in the cinema or putting a film on, like a film almost like can trick them out of a debate. It's not a debate on Facebook. It's like they're watching something and they can relate to this character really well or something, and the character maybe can teach them something subconsciously about or give them empathy towards us, like abortion rights or something, that like a debate on Facebook that's so triggering can't or something like that. And it's like it, it's still a very powerful to do that. And also it's like, and like I'm not going to give big praise to like the Academy Awards or the Oscars, but there's something that's cool about like in the last few years. It's like, especially given it's Hollywood, which is this, ultra whatever rich Zionist awful landscape. There's still like a lot of indie films are winning the awards. It's not just like these giant budget films. Like it's kind of quite encouraging, So, um, and like being in the film space so far, like, and have limited enough experience, but everyone's been so really lovely and really supportive, and it's like-minded people. It's people like us trying to get movies made, So it's like that's what it is across the board. I've experienced that. So like, film does seem to be like a bit of a haven in the world, and hopefully can play a good part in trying to change things for the better. I don't know, a little bit.
Yeah. As much as I don't want us to stop talking about politics and maybe the revolution, but I think that might be a good point to finish off the episode, because we've almost been talking for like an hour.
Yeah.
But I think it was such a lovely way to talk about those topics as well as your film.
Yeah.
I don't know, Chris, if you have a last question, but otherwise
I would have too many questions, but I think it was just great because
we could keep talking for hours.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you so much. I think that's a good point to finish the episode. Thank you so much for talking to us about the film. I really hope that everyone can join us and watch Christy again and again in the cinemas. You also have a new documentary film. I just want to drop it in there called Geltra.
Yeah,
I
nice.
haven't seen it yet, but I just want to mention it so people can have a look out for this one as well, going a little deeper into the Kabin Crew and Kabin Studios.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I can't mention it yet, but it will be having a German premiere in the summer at a festival. So
all right.
yeah, so it's lovely. It's a really nice companion piece, and it's an exploration into that feeling that I talked about in the Kabin Studios, and like where that comes from and what's it about. And it's also an exploration into the Irish language. A lot of it would answer that question you've asked me. So, and it's just a big hug of a documentary. It's like it's just a big hug.
That's what we need.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Agreed.
We'll have a look out and then tell everyone to go and watch it as soon as we see the German release.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you.